Tonight, a man trapped in darkness, stuck for 24 hours in a mine shaft, the complex mission to save his life. An incredible close call. The Hills men stunned but unscathed as a van smashes through their front window. An accused drug driver's destructive run from police. How it all ended in a western suburb supermarket. Bus boost, hundreds of new services for commuters in the Adelaide Hills. And counting down to Australia's first Queen, it's all about Mary. We're live to Copenhagen.
This is Adelaide's 9 News.
Good evening. We begin tonight with the incredible rescue of a Riverland man who fell 25 metres down a mine shaft in the outback town of Coopapedy. Suffering multiple broken bones, the man spent more than 24 hours trapped in darkness before a search party heard his screams.
These are the final moments of an incredible search and rescue mission that saved a man's life.
Obviously had some luck on his side.
The 47-year-old's wife reported him missing to Coopapedy police on Friday night. The experienced local mine rescue team immediately called into action amid fears he'd fallen down one of the many mine shafts surrounding the outback town.
Thankfully, mine rescue jobs aren't very common up here, So that was our first major one in about 3 years.
The man was found down a shaft at the 9 Mile Opal field more than 24 hours after he disappeared, when he was heard calling out for help.
I was quite surprised, considering there was reports it was a 90-foot mine shaft. That's quite a long distance.
It's a very complex technical rescue process that involves multiple agencies.
A 16-strong team carrying out the 3-hour rescue operation.
Volunteers helped haul up the patient and the amazing mine rescue squad member that went down there to retrieve him.
The man was rushed to the Coopapedy Hospital and later flown here to the Royal Adelaide in the early hours of this morning, suffering a dislocated shoulder and a fractured leg. It's understood he was also severely dehydrated and may also have internal injuries.
It's unclear at this stage how the incident occurred. That's still being reviewed.
We're just really happy that he was all right. Well, you know, it was a successful rescue, and that's the main thing.
Kelly Hughes, 9 News.
Two housemates have told of a terrifying close call, a van slamming into the front of their Nairn home while they were watching TV. The vehicle becoming airborne before it smashed through the property, stopping only inches away from the pair.
A lounge room and kitchen in ruins. Just moments after a van came crashing through the front of this Nairn home.
The front of it's completely missing.
Man, nearly killed us. It's ridiculous.
Homeowner Adrian and his housemate Mitchell sitting on this sofa just inches away when it struck. Their dog Mojo caught underneath.
It was like a bomb went off.
While they all escaped uninjured, the driver, a 27-year-old Malang man, was taken to hospital with minor injuries. Police say his van became airborne after hitting an embankment on Woodside Road before ploughing into the property around 11 last night.
It's like a little ramp went whoop.
Emergency services working into the night, propping up a new front wall for safety. But even after the clean-up, the shock was hard to shake.
It's just, a little bit scary. Might need to go see a psychiatrist and talk about it. I don't know. What do you say?
Neighbours today also counting their blessings.
Life's too short, and things like this, no.
I feel like they're very lucky. Yeah, very lucky.
To make matters worse, Adrian's property isn't insured, but he's hopeful his carpentry skills and support network will help get him through.
It's pretty rough that he has to, pay the bill for all of this.
Investigations into the crash are continuing as police await the results of a blood sample from the driver. Samantha Hogan, 9 News.
A woman in her 60s has been taken to hospital after being caught up in a police chase while driving home from church in Adelaide's west. Gus McDonald has the exclusive details. Gus, she was rammed by an alleged drunk driver who was trying to escape police.
Yeah, that's right, Alice. Police say a 37-year-old West Croydon man tested positive for cannabis before driving off. So what started as a routine traffic stop ended in a multiple-car bust-up when the man fled. The man is accused of then colliding into this silver Toyota driven by a woman in her 60s from a Sunday church service. He continued driving erratically into the car park of the Welland Shopping Centre, where he is believed to have been involved in another collision. At that point, the man ditched his car, running into the shopping centre. It was here he was dramatically arrested, held down by multiple police outside of the Coles. He's now expected to face a handful of charges, including failing to stop at the scene of a crash and driving without due care. Alice, fortunately, nobody was seriously injured, but a woman was taken to hospital for testing.
Gus McDonald, thank you. A 13-year-old boy has been knocked off his bike at a pedestrian crossing on King William Street in the city. Police say the teenager was hit by a Honda after crossing on a red light. Paramedics took him to hospital with minor injuries. The driver of the car, a 40-year-old Enfield man, wasn't injured. A man has been rescued after falling off the rocks of a breakwater at Wallaroo on the Yorke Peninsula. These pictures show the rescue helicopter arriving to winch him to safety. Police say the 53-year-old from Jamestown was initially unconscious, but his condition is now stable. More frequent and reliable bus services. That's the promise from the state government to Adelaide Hills residents. Almost 600 extra trips will be added to the timetable at Mount Barker as the region grapples with a population boom.
Mount Barker bus driver Ryan Orchard at the wheel in one of the fastest growing regions in the country.
They're crying out for more buses, so I think the higher frequency is certainly helping.
In the mornings when it's a bit of a rush sometimes, like it is, we do miss it sometimes.
The roads are so busy these days and on the freeway.
Even the Premier taking advantage of his government's latest investment, $20 million and the addition of 590 bus services each week between Mount Barker and the city.
It's long overdue, but it's now coming.
The growing timetable bolstered by 15 new hybrid buses and an expanding workforce of drivers, now gearing up for the addition of a weekday go zone along the southeastern freeway, with buses leaving Mount Barker every 6 minutes during peak periods and no more than every 15 minutes during other times, while weekend services will operate every half hour for most of the day.
What we want is frequency. We want people to basically not need to worry about timetables.
That's what gets cars off our road and provides relief to the freeway.
At least 36 of the new bus services will start to roll out later this month, with the government expecting the full schedule to be implemented by the end of the year.
This is a service our community deserves.
But the opposition says more investment in road infrastructure is still needed.
There's still no proper plan for Mount Barker interchange, for issues up in Hahndorf. These problems still remain.
Shannon McDonald, 9 News.
Members of the public stepped in to stop an armed thief recovering cash he'd taken from a Subway store in Paralowie. The man threatened staff just before 6 o'clock last night, then tried to run off with money, but was challenged by people nearby. The 44-year-old left empty-handed on a push bike, but was tracked down at a Modbury Heights house a short time later. He's been charged with aggravated robbery. And another man was arrested for threatening staff with a knife at a Grange service station. He ran off with stolen cigarettes from the Military Road business just after 7:30 last night. Polair helped track the 34-year-old man to a nearby street where he was arrested. Thankfully, no one was injured. A family of 3 managed to escape as a fire broke out in their Modbury Heights home. Smoke was spotted coming from the rear of the property just after 11 o'clock last night. It was quickly extinguished by fire crews. One person was taken to hospital with smoke inhalation. What started the fire is still under investigation. The federal government has pledged a major crackdown on illegal tobacco, committing almost $190 million for Border Force and federal police to target smuggling operations. It comes as a criminal turf war continues to rage in Melbourne over the control of black market tobacco.
Another tobacco shop up in smoke. The latest in a series of suspected arson attacks in Melbourne.
Explosions and the whole shop took off.
It was scary and loud.
They're like exploding grenades, little bombs.
Right now, there is a war for control of the illegal tobacco and illegal vaping market, and it's taking place in our suburban shopping strips.
Outlaw bikie groups in a violent wrestle with criminal syndicates over lucrative illicit trade.
Organised crime gangs are using illegal cigarettes, tobacco and vapes as an ATM to fund their activities like sex trafficking and drug trafficking.
The government's taken their foot off the pedal, and you've allowed, over the course of the last 18 months, for these organised crime groups to really take hold.
Imported illegal tobacco, both loose leaf and black market cigarettes, also burning a big hole in the federal budget.
The market in illegal cigarettes and illegal tobacco costs taxpayers more than $2 billion, maybe as much as $3 billion every single year.
Australian smokers are among the world's highest taxed. Tobacco excise a massive revenue source for the federal purse. More than $55 billion to be collected from smokers over the next 4 years, far outstripping other so-called sin taxes on beer and spirits. By comparison, petrol excise will collect $30 billion over the same period. Border Force and the Australian Federal Police will receive almost $190 million to target tobacco smugglers.
To shut down this illegal trafficking at its source, it will help boost interception activities at the border by ABF.
The paradox with tobacco tax is that while it's increased every year to discourage smokers, the government increasingly becomes addicted to the revenue it generates. Andrew Probyn, 9 News.
In just a few hours, we'll have our first Australian-born monarch as Princess Mary becomes the Queen of Denmark, both our country and her adopted homeland celebrating her ascension.
A final run-through fit for a king and queen. Rehearsals at the Christiansborg Palace include not only the Royal Horse Guards, but a stand-in carriage for the one that will carry one monarch in and a new king and queen out.
It was exciting to see a little pre-show of what's going to happen tomorrow.
The stage is quickly being set after the surprise New Year's Eve announcement by Queen Margrethe that she was stepping down. Copenhagen streets only have a few hastily improvised nods to the royal shake-up. One that has locals queuing up is at Le Glace Bakery, which has a 150-year history of making cakes in tribute to the royal family. After selling Queen Margrethe cakes for 52 years, they've had days to come up with a recipe for King Frederick to take the cake.
We landed on this version here, which is elegant, masculine, and hopefully loved by people for many, many years.
Opinion polls show that when it comes to who's the most popular royal after Margrethe, it's Mary.
A lovely girl. She's doing it very well. The way she behaves, I think she's a queen worthy.
She's seen as Frederick's most worthy asset as they become Denmark's power couple 24 years after meeting at a Sydney pub during the 2000 Olympics.
I think people really think he will be a great king. Alongside with Queen Mary, they will make a great couple. She's helped him a lot, finding his way to prepare him to be a king. So people are really supportive of our Queen Mary.
The handover of power could hardly be more simple. Margrethe will sign a document of abdication, and at that moment, Frederick becomes King Frederick X and Mary Queen. No coronation, just a public proclamation.
This square will be packed tomorrow when the Danish Prime Minister steps out onto that balcony to proclaim the new monarchy. Frederick will then make a speech to the crowd before his wife joins him. The first time Mary will be stepping out as Queen Mary.
And there's agreement that Frederick, at 55, is taking over at the right time compared to another recently installed monarch just across the way.
We all look at the UK and look at Charles and say, he's old. So we don't want that.
In Copenhagen, Brett McLeod, 9 News.
Live to Europe correspondent Brett McLeod, who's in Copenhagen. Brett, what will happen in the hours ahead?
Well, the residents of the two buildings behind me, the two palaces behind me, Alice, Queen Margrethe, Frederick and Mary will leave here in a few hours' time for a moment in Danish history and really European royal history as well, when Margrethe goes to Frederiksborg Palace to abdicate. And at that moment, that's when Frederick will become Frederick X. There won't be a coronation. We won't even see a crown. But the good news is when they make their way back here in a carriage of state, the skies are clear, it's cold, but people will have a very good look at their new king and their new Australian-born queen. Alice.
Brett, thank you. Emergency crews were hard at work after a large branch fell onto a home at Ross Trevor. Wild weather causing the branch to break off at around 8 o'clock. An elderly woman was home at the time but not injured. Strong winds overnight and this morning resulted in more than 100 calls to SES, most of those for fallen trees in and around Adelaide. South Australian Olympian Kyle Chalmers has shown off the Marion Swimming Club's new cap design, the first in the state to feature an Indigenous design. The artwork was created by 14-year-old Nurrungeri girl Latoya Malera, who says the cap celebrates who she is and where she came from. Chalmers is supporting a push to get more Indigenous children into the pool. Well, the sun was out for what has been a bumper opening day at the Australian Open. Huge crowds swarming Melbourne Park, with ticket sales surprising organisers.
A new beginning for the Australian Open. Thousands taking advantage of the Sunday start to the tournament, and the enthusiasm is infectious.
Oh, we're happy Australian Open. That's exciting. Yeah.
I want to see them dominate people.
Aussie, Aussie, Aussie!
But fans came to support their favourites from all over the world.
Go the Greeks!
Yannick Sinner is a really good tennis player, so we are here for support.
And this is what the competitors are playing for. Yvonne Goolagong won 50 years ago, and she wants an Australian to lift the cup this time too.
Obviously, Alex de Minaur. He's been winning a few tournaments.
Andre Agassi missing his wife, but happy to be back in Melbourne.
The knowledge of the fans here, the sporting fans, you could feel it when you're out there.
For many, the morning started with a coffee. Others preferred bubbles. This year, there's a two-storey courtside bar.
Best of both worlds, drink in hand, watching the tennis.
But the privilege comes with a warning: don't get too rowdy. Food is plentiful, curry and chips for this couple.
Delicious, though. Very good.
And while the players battle it out on the court, kids get a chance to have a hit too.
Aim is to hit my brother as much as I can.
Staying cool is a priority, and sunscreen is free.
Frankie, apparently they've increased shade by 300%. What do you think?
It's a lot better than last year. It beats the sun, yeah.
And for Nisha and Faze from Sydney, the AO opening day, a perfect way to celebrate their anniversary.
Yeah, we've been married for 15 years now.
By mid-afternoon, Melbourne Park was heaving.
Ticket sales today have been fairly significant, a lot more than we expected.
There's every reason to believe that we'll get over 1 million people coming here.
So what is the secret to cracking that magic million? Well, organisers say it's having more days exactly like this one. Not too hot, not too breezy, and blue skies.
So far, so good. What a way to kick off Australia's favourite Grand Slam. Reid Butler, 9 News.
And Will Crouch is here now, and Will, all the action is well and truly underway at Melbourne Park.
Well, no doubt. Novak Djokovic in action tonight, while one wildcard almost pulled off an epic upset. Hi everyone, all the latest from the Australian Open a little later, but also ahead. Steve Smith issues a bold challenge to the West Indian bowling attack. Plus, the NFL coach keeping his cool, even in freezing conditions.
Thanks, Will. We'll see you soon. Growing calls for a ceasefire 100 days since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. And a little later, long COVID and heart problems. The symptoms seeing a rush to GPs. US President Joe Biden says he's delivered a private message to Iran after 2 days of US-led strikes on Houthi bases in Yemen. Thousands of protesters have taken to the streets in cities around the world calling for a ceasefire, as this weekend marks 100 days since the start of the Israel-Hamas war.
2 targeted strikes in 48 hours, wiping out Houthi military assets in Yemen. Satellite pictures revealing scorch marks left on a radar site at Sana'a airport and shelters destroyed at an airfield in Hodeidah.
A message to Iran in the face of all these attacks from the Houthis. We're delivering it privately, and we're confident we're okay.
The strikes hit 90% of their targets, damaging the Houthis' ability to carry out complex missile and drone attacks.
There were over 150 precision munitions employed
on over 60 different targets.
But US officials say the Iran-backed militants remain capable of firing at ships transiting the Red Sea, attacking commercial vessels in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza, causing havoc with the crucial shipping route. 100 days since the October 7 attacks, thousands took to the streets of central London and Freedom Plaza in Washington, D.C. to call for a ceasefire.
The White House has been trying to separate the strikes on Yemen from the Israel-Hamas war, but protesters here say the two are inextricably linked and they fear a wider conflict.
I mean, I think it seems like a pretty thin veil to try to portray that it's not connected.
You don't want the war to escalate, stop bombing people. That sounds like an escalation to me on our behalf.
In Washington, D.C., Alison Petrowski, 9 News.
2 men have died in a light plane crash in Queensland. Police say the aircraft was returning to the airfield around 90 kilometres south of Brisbane before the tragedy unfolded just before midday. Several golfers witnessed the crash. Aviation investigators are now looking into the cause. A South Australian cattle farmer has gone viral after posting this video of himself saving a calf. The little one was born in a dam, meaning she was unable to take her first breaths. The farmer quickly jumping in to help with an old but unusual farming trick.
The calf wizzy is a way of being able to clear their airways. Pick them up if you've got the strength, swing them around and it clears that airway of any gunk that's in there, including water that she might have taken in when she went in the dam.
His efforts have now been viewed by 1.6 million people, and thankfully the calf is back to perfect health, returning to the paddock with mum. From coast to coast, the life-threatening Arctic blast freezing the US. Those details next. Plus, the world's fastest man hitches a ride in the world's fastest electric vehicle. Taiwan has sent a strong message to Beijing after re-electing the ruling Democratic Progressive Party. In nearly 30 years of democracy on the island, voters have granted a political party a third term, one that rejects reunification with China.
Supporters of the Democratic Progressive Party celebrating an historic victory. Lai Ching-te leading the DPP to an unprecedented third term. The new president thanking the Taiwanese people and pledging to stand up to threats from Beijing, which claims the island as its own, further entrenching tensions with China for another 4 years.
We are a country. We are the light of the world. We love freedom. We love democracy.
Opposition Kuomintang leader Hu Yui conceded defeat with an apology. I did not work hard enough, he told supporters. I let everyone down. I'm sorry. It's a rebuke for his party, which had called for closer ties with China after a decade of military threats and economic coercion. China has already dismissed the poll as not reflecting the will of the people, saying its will on achieving national reunification is rock solid. It also warned Canberra over any miscalculations in its relationship with Taiwan's new government.
Obviously, we don't want to see any disruption to the status quo on the Taiwan Strait. That's been a long-standing position of Australian governments of both political persuasions.
Under Taiwan's first-past-the-post voting system, the DPP received just 40% of the vote. After 8 years of majority government, it will have to find support from a minor party to pass legislation. Eddie Meyer, 9 News.
A life-threatening cold emergency is sweeping across America. The Arctic blast leaving millions at risk as temperatures near new records. The country is facing weather alerts coast to coast, and nothing is immune, from presidential campaigns to football playoffs.
21 degrees below zero, and on the football field, this is history.
Fourth coldest NFL playoff game.
One of the coldest playoff games to ever be held. Kansas City welcoming Miami and Taylor Swift to the big freeze.
And yes, she's here. Watch, it looks like a Taylor video.
35 states across America are tonight on alert. The country shivering through an intense and dangerous cold. In Iowa, it's just 2 days until the all-important caucus.
Good, it's cold here in Iowa.
America's first opportunity to vote, but presidential campaigns are facing cold weather chaos. Donald Trump has been forced to put 3 of his 4 scheduled rallies on ice amid the warning to anyone outside, in this weather, it only takes 10 minutes for frostbite to take hold.
You have the worst weather, I guess, in recorded history, but maybe that's good because our people are more committed than anybody else.
It's hard to describe how bitterly cold it feels. Here in Omaha, with the wind chill, the temperatures are getting down to minus 41 degrees. That's more than 2 times colder than a deep freezer.
More than 1,100 flights have been cancelled across the country. When you look at this runway, it's not hard to see why. Americans are used to the cold in these parts, but this is a cold on a whole new scale. In Omaha, Nebraska, Lauren Tomasi, 9 News.
The world's fastest man has met his match in car form. Usain Bolt taking a ride in a record-breaking electric Formula race car ahead of the first E-race in Mexico City. The car charged to 100 metres in 4.36 seconds, just over 5 seconds faster than Bolt's 100-metre sprint record. Still ahead, the link between long COVID and heart problems. The symptoms seeing a rush to GPs. That story next. Plus, the workers who could soon get an extra week's annual leave. Our very own Australian-born Princess Mary is just hours away from becoming the Queen of Denmark. Hailing from Tasmania, Mary's former teachers have today given us an insight into the girl destined for royalty.
Her mother used to call her princess. Tomorrow, all of Denmark will call her queen. But at heart, the royal will always be the girl from Taroona, growing up the youngest of 4 on the idyllic coastline south of Hobart.
When you least expect it, you've got a princess close by, and now a queen.
From hockey to horse riding, she wanted to do it all.
Taroona High School was 4 years of when you really start to grow up, I think.
So, David, which one was the classroom which you taught Mary in?
The classroom just up there was where I taught her class, yes.
David Perkins was Mary's Year 10 science teacher. Little did he know, 37 years ago, he was bestowing knowledge to a future queen.
She was a very good student, very capable, conscientious, hard-working, and achieved very good results.
His wife Judy taught at Mary's infant school.
We're just very proud that Tasmania's the birthplace of a beautiful queen.
The Princess's Year 8 Home Economics Cookbook, still a favourite in the Perkins household.
There's the famous lamb chop casserole by Mary Donaldson, as you can see.
On behalf of all her former schools in Tasmania, the Department of Education is tonight wishing Princess Mary all the best in her new role, saying we hope the richness of her education and experiences at school helped play a part. Our Mary is how she's known here. Cheers. If you had one message for Mary today, what would it be?
We'd say we're proud of you.
It's hard to sort of fathom, really, that she's now going to become a queen.
Celebrated today in true noble fashion.
I'm a Taroona girl and she was a Taroona girl, so it's nice to be able to celebrate with all my family.
The littlest of princesses dressing up in their Sunday best.
I like that hers in Tasmania.
Mary, a fan of them as much as they are of her, Tasmania's NBL team now hoping Denmark's queen will become their official patron.
We can't be prouder of her. It's just such a fairy tale story.
There's certainly a sense of pride here in Hobart, and from the shores of Taroona to the mainland, celebrations are kicking off right around the country. From Brisbane to Melbourne, Aussies putting on festivities fit for a queen. In Hobart, Madison Scott, 9 News.
Doctors are raising the alarm as a concerning number of long COVID cases present with cardiac complications. As the country endures another wave of the virus, there's new fears it's putting more pressure on our already ailing health system.
Gertrude Bean is a former GP who's worked in the field for more than 30 years. Less than 6 months ago, she was struck down by COVID.
Had a runny nose, a headache. I thought for COVID that I'd got off lightly.
Suffering only minor symptoms, 4 weeks later, cardiac complications kicked in.
And I had palpitations, which, felt like, a frog jumping about in your chest, and I got a bit of shortness of breath and chest pain. I wasn't thinking that it would happen to me. The cardiologist said, well, you have absolutely zero risk factors for this other than the fact that you recently had COVID.
GPs are now seeing an influx of patients presenting with heart problems after long COVID.
10% of people who have a COVID infection go on to have long COVID, and these are symptoms that persist beyond 12 weeks.
COVID causes inflammation of the heart muscle and also the blood vessels. What we're seeing is increased presentations of heart attacks, strokes, and issues around the electricity of the heart.
While symptoms associated with long COVID vary, the most common include shortness of breath, fatigue, brain fog, palpitations and chest pain. GPs on the front line calling for more resourcing to manage the surge in patients.
We need to train and recruit more healthcare professionals.
Our GPs need financial support to be able to continue the great work that they do.
Health authorities also urging those eligible to make sure their vaccinations are up to date. McKenna Bailey, 9 News.
Good news tonight for retail employees, with more companies pushing for 5 weeks of paid annual leave. IKEA and Bunnings employees already get 25 days off with no change to wages. The retail union says negotiations are underway for the same deal for workers at Kmart, Coles and Woolworths. The names of Monarto Safari Park's newest members of the Pride have been revealed. The little boy is called Bahati, while the 3 females were named Mashindi, Layla and Khadija. All Swahili names that were selected by hundreds of people who voted online. Their keepers say the now 4-month-olds are starting to show their personalities, growing more confident each day. Sports next with Will Crouch. And Will, a big story brewing out of Alberton.
Alice, we're hearing another Power Star's on the verge of signing a massive contract extension. Hi everyone, the latest on that breaking news next. But also ahead, a down day for the Aussies, but not without some highs at the Australian Open. Plus, how Steve Smith convinced sceptical selectors he's ready to open the batting. Hello again. We'll get to the tennis shortly, but first to some breaking news. And Port Adelaide star Todd Marshall is set to shun free agency and sign a massive extension at Alberton. Nine's chief football reporter Tom Morris has the exclusive details.
Will, Todd Marshall was set to be one of the highest profile free agents out of contract at the end of 2024, but I can tell you tonight the key forward from Port Adelaide will put pen to paper likely before round 1 on a new long-term deal of at least 4 years. Now this follows of course Connor Rozee and Zach Butters last month, Butters until the end of 2026, and in the same week Connor Rozee, the new captain of Port, until the end of 2032. Now all parties expect this contract to be sorted by round 1 at the absolute latest, and Marshall's deal will take him through until at least the end of 2028, by which time he'll be almost 30 years old. It's a massive feather in the cap of not just the player, but also Port Adelaide Football Club, and it leaves Ben King and Jamari Ugle-Hagan as the 2 other high-profile players who are also forwards and out of contract at the end of 2024. Neither are free agents, but I do expect both to re-sign in the coming months. Will?
Great stuff, Tom Morris there with some breaking news. Let's get to tennis now, and the Australian Open is officially underway. Both last year's men's and women's champions in Novak Djokovic and Arina Sabalenka kick off their title defences tonight. It comes after little-known Australian Dane Swenny almost stole the show, almost causing a massive upset in a 5-set thriller.
7 wins and the Australian Open is yours. While our local heroes haven't been able to climb their first obstacle today, Sydney sider Chris O'Connell is in with a fighting chance. On the comeback after losing the first set, he's hoping to turn the tide for the Aussies after some of our rising stars have fallen short in the first round.
And he finishes it off with a ripping forehand winner.
Wildcard Dane Swenny almost pulling off a miracle win over 22nd seed Francisco Cerundolo, stealing 2 sets from the Argentine to the delight of a raucous home crowd.
Oh yes.
But ultimately, he fell in a 5-set classic, a game of centimetres that didn't go his way. Still a Grand Slam debut to remember. It hasn't been all cruisy for the internationals either. World number 12 Taylor Fritz suffering an ankle injury in his opener after dropping his first set to outsider Facundo Diaz Acosta. Earlier, Yannick Sinner shook off some unforced errors to cruise through with a straight sets victory over Botic van der Zandskoop. Some local love for the Italian with Australian master coach Darren Cahill in his corner.
He's getting more Italian slowly, so we try to teach him. We try to teach him what kind of pasta is good to eat and what not. So.
In the women's draw, no early surprises. World number 11 Barbara Krejcikova shook off a scare to win in 3 sets, while seed 8 Maria Sakkari cruised past her first hurdle 6-1, 6-4. Xana Maguire, 9 News.
Well, meantime, Jelena Ostapenko has fired an ominous warning ahead of her Open campaign after taking out the Adelaide International. The Latvian making light work of Russian Daria Kisatkinka in the final, eventually winning in 3 sets.
First title down under for Jelena Ostapenko, and it comes here in Adelaide.
Straight sets rather, an emotional Yuri Lechka also full of confidence as he heads for Melbourne after earlier taking out the men's title with a win over Jack Draper. Let's get to cricket now, and with the first test in Adelaide just days away, Steve Smith has challenged opposition bowlers to bounce him with the new ball ahead of his debut at the top of the order. The 34-year-old revealing selectors initially didn't take him seriously when he offered to replace David Warner.
It's hardly a surprise that Steve Smith can get a little edgy, but this revelation will shock you.
I don't like waiting to bat, I never really have, and I actually don't like watching cricket that much, believe it or not.
105 test matches into his illustrious career, Smith is taking on his greatest challenge yet as an opener.
It's something that isn't really foreign to me. I've batted on numerous occasions where I've come in early doors.
But when it comes to making his pitch, selectors took some convincing.
I don't think they sort of took me seriously until I got to Sydney, and I was like, no, I'm actually being genuine here.
Smith daring opponents, beginning with the West Indies in Wednesday's first test, to keep targeting him with the short ball, a tactic that has been effective in recent years.
You're pretty game, I suppose, if you're with the brand new ball bowling short stuff and wasting it, but that's up to each opposition.
The move up allowing the highly fancied Cameron Green to return to the side at number 4.
For me, it didn't sort of sit right having him come in and bat up top. I've played for a long time and I'm an experienced player, and I think it's something that I should have done.
Braden Ingram, 9 News.
Red striker Hiroshi Ibisuki has helped Adelaide United snap a 4-game winless streak with a stunning hat-trick, helping his side past Sydney FC. The veteran striker starring to help the Reds climb back into the top 6.
Hero by name and by nature.
The early cross. Ibisuki, great header! It's in the back of the net. It's a hat-trick.
Japanese striker Hiroshi Ibisuki finally giving these Reds fans something to celebrate.
He's been, a leading light for us. I'm very happy for him tonight to get that reward for the work that he's been doing the last month and a half.
Sydney firing in the opening minutes, leaving the Reds rattled.
The first 20 minutes, we were a bit shell-shocked, I'd say.
And with just 2 wins from their last 10 games, United needed a hero.
And Ibisuki, wonderful cross.
The veteran striker sparking his side back into form before half-time.
Hiroshi Ibisuki is in the form of his life at the moment.
And he wasn't done yet, eventually capping off a perfect night away from home.
For the man they call hero. And tonight, he well and truly is.
Earlier, Nestri Irakunda snapped out of his slump.
And it's in from Irakunda.
The Reds wrapping up their first win in 4 games to climb back up to 5th ahead of Thursday's clash with Melbourne City. Emma Henderson, 9 News.
Let's get to basketball. The 36ers hot streak has come to an end, blowing a double-digit lead to the Taipans in Cairns. Despite leading by 10 points in the final quarter, the Sixers couldn't keep up in crunch time as Cairns rallied to force overtime.
In this fourth quarter, Armstrong. Nice way to tie it away. It's 94 apiece, a minute to play. Fans going wild in Cairns.
And even in the extra period, Adelaide had few answers as the Taipans capped a 20-point turnaround and were clearly enjoying every second of it. The loss leaves Adelaide in the unenviable position of last on the table. And finally tonight, a frosty reception for the Miami Dolphins as they kicked off the NFL playoffs in Kansas City where temperatures dropped to minus 20 degrees Celsius. While the Chiefs ran away with a win in the extreme cold, no one was safe from the elements.
Look at the ice circles forming.
Coach Andy Reid's moustache freezing over, and it wasn't quite so cold up in the stands where Taylor Swift was shaking it off. It was a whole lot colder though at the Bills Stadium in Buffalo. Their clash with Pittsburgh, understandably postponed. You can barely see straight, Alice.
Oh my goodness, freezing, unbelievable.
Amazing stuff.
Thanks, Will. Well, more hot weather here on the way. I've got the full forecast next, but first here's a look at tomorrow's speed cameras.
Wake up and laugh with Adelaide's #1 breakfast show.
Rudits and Lows tomorrow on 104.7 Triple M.
For the latest Adelaide news and traffic.
Hello again. Well, our run of heat continues. Today we reached a top of 30.5 degrees this afternoon. After some muggy nights, it was a little cooler last night, down to 17.9, and right now it's still at 27.5 degrees. Across the suburbs, hot and a little windy, 31 for Elizabeth and Glenelg, and 23 on Mount Lofty. Hot and stormy through the north with isolated thunderstorms still moving through parts, 41 up in Roxby and Coober Pedy, 26 in Whyalla. A little cooler through the state's south, still 31 degrees for Keith, but Mount Gambier was a cooler 24. On the charts, that high pressure system is keeping the weather warm, fine and relatively stable for us at the moment, but some cloudy and moist winds is bringing showers to the east coast. So showers tomorrow for Brisbane, Sydney and Canberra. Melbourne, though, turning it on for the Australian Open, a mostly sunny 28 degrees. More heat on the way through our north tomorrow. Roxby and Coober Pedy both looking at 40 degrees. Sunny and warm through the state's south too, up to 34 in Murray Bridge and Maitland. Mount Gambier headed for 31. A strong wind warning is in place tomorrow along the central coast and south central coast, and on metro waters, winds moving around a bit, becoming southeasterly at 20 knots and seas at 1 metre. Hot and sunny right across the suburbs tomorrow. Elizabeth headed for 35 degrees. Glenelg and Mount Barker all expecting 32. Sunny and 34 degrees for the city after a low of 18 overnight. Looking ahead to Tuesday, 34 degrees with a very slight chance of a shower, possibly a thunderstorm north of Adelaide. Then returning to sunny skies with a slightly cooler 27 on Wednesday, 26 and partly cloudy on Thursday, then back up to 29 on Friday, and another hot and sunny weekend on the way with a top of 34 on Saturday and 31 degrees this time next week. And that's all from the 9 News team for this Sunday. Thanks for your company this weekend. Kate Collins and Brenton Raglers return to the 6 p.m. desk tomorrow. I'm Alice Monfries. Good night.